This class will be talking about operating systems. We're going to talk about what an operating system is, and we're going to do an overview of the major operating systems in use today. An operating system is a program that controls the CPU, the central processing unit of the computer. The central processing computer is mounted on the motherboard, and it is the brains of the computer. The operating system is the controller. And to give it a human example, you have a brain, but the knowledge that's within your brain is that operating system. You know how to tie your shoe. You can reach down and tie your shoe, and your brain controls your body to make those motions. Person sitting next to you also ties their shoe, but they don't do it exactly like you do. Their operating system gives a different set of instructions to tie that shoe. It's the interface between the user and the hardware. It is any application that wants to use the hardware for anything has to go through the operating system. So the operating system provides services such as program creation. You can create programs using the operating system. We do that all the time. We create scripts, which are miniature applets or programs. We have program execution. The program will allow Microsoft Office products such as Word to work on that computer. The operating system can use that higher level language and tell the computer that we need to save this to memory or we need to print this on the printer. Right? And that gives us access to the I/O devices and the files. The I/O is the input-output. Input devices like keyboards, mice, microphones, output devices like speakers, monitors, printers. All that's controlled by the operating system. And you have specific drivers or little applets within that operating system that would control each peripheral device. And also it establishes the file, the hierarchy for the file. It tells you how the files are to be stored and how they're to be identified and how they can be found when you're looking for them later. It also has system access, again, giving you access to the systems, the time, everything that's internal within that operating system. It also gives error detection and correction. It detects when there's something wrong. A program didn't execute correctly. It's going to request the program didn't, or it's going to put an error message up on your screen. And then it also accounts. It uses logs. This was an anomaly. This should not have happened. Or this has happened. Let's take a note of it. We're using 75% of our CPU usage. The operating system will report that, or can report that, or just log it for future reference. Major operating systems in use today, by far the most popular is Windows, about 84% of the market share for desktops and laptops, followed by Apple OS, and then Linux. Linux is an open source thing that we're going to talk about in detail in just a little bit. Microsoft Windows. The Microsoft Windows that are here were all based on Microsoft's disk operating system, or DOS. And you had to have DOS installed before you could put this on top of it. And it would interface with DOS and allow you to operate the computer in a more friendly graphical user interface. Now, the GUI, or graphical user interface, is how we think of Windows today and how we interact with most of our programs. You also have command line interface, which you can go to the command line and do some commands, but normally a typical user will only use the graphical user interface. After 2001, after the millennial, Microsoft came out with XP, which was independent of the disk operating system, had its own operating system that it ran. XP was very successful and is still being used today in about 30% of the computers worldwide. Third world countries are still using XP. Some companies here in America are still using XP to this date because it's too costly for them to upgrade. Vista came out, and we're not going to talk much about it because it was rapidly followed by Windows 7, which got it right. Windows 7 was a major upgrade to Windows XP. It took care of some multimedia issues that Windows XP had, and also brought in security with Microsoft Security Essentials. Security started to be, in 2009, started to be hitting more and more, being a bigger and bigger concern. Windows 2008 came out, introducing the Metro interface where you had the tiles and everything, but it wasn't as secure as Windows 7. People didn't appreciate it, so they rapidly went to Windows 8.1, which still retained the Metro interface, but allowed you to have the Windows 7 interface if you chose, and brought the security features more up to date. Windows 10, which came out in 2015, enhanced those security features, embedded the Microsoft Security Essentials within the operating system even more, And then the last Windows iteration we have now is Windows 10 Anniversary Update, which is getting more cloud-based because as we go in the future, we're going to be doing more and more in the cloud and having hardware agnostic, so it doesn't matter what hardware you're using. So you can store your updates on the cloud and pull them out on your phone or your tablet. All right. Microsoft Server, during the same time, Microsoft was developing an additional professional services operating system to provide services for the client-server networks that were springing up. There were some prior to Windows 2000, but the first ones that really took off and started gaining market share for Microsoft was Windows 2000 Server. After that was 2003. 2003 R2 was a major update to that server. It started being more secure at that point. 2008 came out, and then 2008 R2. 2008 R2 came out about the same time as the Windows 8.1. Then we went through 2012 and 2012 R2, and now we're up to 2016. Windows Server 2016 is going again more to the cloud, being more friendly for cloud and virtualization. 2008 and 2012 versions of Server would allow virtualization, and we're very good at that. But it's being enhanced even more with Windows Server 2016. With the Mac, with the Apple OSs, we have the Mac OS and we have the iOS. The main difference between the two, the Mac OSs are used for desktops and laptops. The iOSs are used for all the mobile devices, iPhones, iPads, iPad Pros. These iOSs are totally interchangeable with the MAC addresses except for the hardware dependence. You need the faster processors and everything for the Mac OSs. They handle the calls about the same way. They handle their interfaces with the peripheral devices about the same way. However, you only install iOSs in mobile devices, and you only install Mac OSs in stationary devices. And with Linux, our final operating system we're going to talk about today, there's many, many, many distributions of Linux, as you can see here. These are only a few of them. There are thousands of Linux things. Whereas Microsoft and Apple OSs are proprietary to that company, and if you want to change anything, you have to have their permission. Linux distributions are mostly open source. You can find open source to do anything, server, mobile, laptop, desktop, whatever you want to do, you can find a Linux distribution to do that. Some are for gaming, they're set up for gaming. Others are for very small computing processors, like the Raspbian OS for the Raspberry Pi. It only used on that hardware. It works well with that hardware, but it doesn't give you all the frills that you might get on a full-blown CentOS or Kubuntu or Ubuntu operating system. Linux is by far the fastest growing of the operating systems out there, especially in the server world. It's taken up more and more market share from the others. Right? In summary, we talked about operating systems, how they control applications and CPU usage. We talked about the three major operating systems in use today: Windows, Apple OS, and Linux. Thank you.